Today, among other issues, the Federal Executive Council considered the 2024 Appropriation Bill. You may recall that the Medium Term and Expenditure Framework was earlier approved and transmitted to the National Assembly, which the National Assembly graciously approved. And that approved Medium Term Expenditure Framework has an exchange rate of 700 Naira to $1, and equally the reference, the benchmark for crude oil price at $73.96. However, in Mr. President's determination to find more money to fund our priorities, today the Federal Executive Council further revised the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and the Fiscal Policy Framework. And two of the important decisions was to use an exchange rate of 750 Naira to $1, and also a benchmark crude oil reference price of $77.96, meaning $4 more than the earlier approval. This will significantly increase revenue, government revenue, that Mr. President intends to use in supporting, further supporting the ministries, departments, and agencies in the execution of the 8 priority areas, particularly health, education, infrastructure, security, and other developmental areas. Equally, the Federal Executive Council approved the 2024 Appropriation Bill and the presentation of such to the National Assembly by His Excellency, Mr. President. The bill has an aggregate expenditure of 27 trillion 500 billion, which is an increase of over 1.5 trillion from the previously estimated using the old reference prices. The forecast revenue is now 18.32 trillion, which is higher than the 2023 revenues, including that provided in the 2 supplementary budgets. Equally and commendably, the deficit is lower than that of 2023. Details of the renewed hope budget will be announced by Mr. President when he made the presentation to the National Assembly. The budget is a process until it is signed into law, and based on the demands that is brought to bear on Mr. President by MDAs and the determination of the President to make as much resources available as he can find within the law, within due process, that provided the opportunity to review in order to make more resources available to implement the 8-point agenda. And secondly, will the executive represent somebody? No, there was a question on representing the medium term. Yes, I think my presentation started with that. Sorry, my second prayer, that the first I said was the Federal Executive Council approved a revised medium-term expenditure and fiscal policy paper, which will be submitted along with the appropriation bill to the National Assembly. Then when will the budget go to the National Assembly. We are ready, and we have requested the National Assembly to confirm a date, but to respect separation of powers, we won't announce our request, but rather what the National Assembly confirms.
The memo I presented was for approval of draft national report for the fourth cycle of the United Nations Universal Periodic Review. As you all know, Nigeria is a member of so many international organizations, including the United Nations. And in the United Nations, we have there is a practice of reporting your human rights records, among others, periodically. We reported in 2009, in 2013, and 2018. So since 2018, we have not made any report. And there will be a meeting where all these reports will be, considered in February 2024. We believe that it is better, it's just right that we forward this report ahead of that meeting in February 2024. So after engaging critical stakeholders in the country in each of the 6 geopolitical zones, and including all the three tiers of government, the state, national, and at the national, state, and local government level, we compiled a report which we are sending to the United Nations on Human Rights Universal Periodic Review for consideration. So that's why, but before we can do that, we have to bring it to the Executive Council. So we got approval to forward the report to the United Nations. That is it. Reports which we forwarded or which we are to be forwarding on periodic basis will highlight some areas where questions are asked. For instance, there has been issue of whether we employ or recruit children into the Nigerian armed forces. And we said no. The evidence is there that we don't do this. Then do we respect the right of women? Do we discriminate against women? The answer again is no. And we have authorities. When I say authorities, I mean judicial pronouncements to this effect. Before now, the position was that if you were a woman, especially in some parts of the country, you could not inherit your parents, particularly your father, but we have had judicial pronouncements along this line. These are some of the things that we forwarded. Then in respect of corruption, how far have we gone about fighting corruption, especially the money stacked away by former political office holders? Again, we have to respond to this and let them know that we are pursuing this. Not only are we pursuing the corruption cases, we also make judicious use of whatever comes to the country, and it has been under the supervision of very reputable consultants.
As the Honourable Minister of Information said, there was a briefing by the Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee. Essentially, they've been working for roughly 90 days. They've been working very well and very effectively, such that they're in a position to have even impacted the economy by coming up with initial reforms, as well as signposting the way forward in terms of very important targets. So in a nutshell, the policy on VAT removal on diesel is from them. They are looking to help boost fiscal situation of the government by increasing revenue, particularly tax revenue, through digitalization, additional efficiency, and rationalization of the range of taxes that we have at the moment. They are looking to increase the ratio of tax revenue to GDP to 18%, which is the average for Africa. So many countries are above that level. It is actually about double where we are now, and within a matter of a few years, their target is to reach 18%. And there's an economic, other economic measures in the short term are being contemplated. And the report was well received by Mr. President and indeed the whole Federal Executive Council. Honorable Minister, at the same time, I would like to give a summary of the memos that I had approved at Council today. And of course, they were all to do with financing. First of all, there was an inherited financing, an inherited loan processing, which was to do with the a $100 million financing from African Development Bank and US dollars 15 million from the Canada African Development Bank Climate Fund. And it's all to finance Abia State. Essentially, it was approved, or it was processed before this administration came in, and so it has been inherited. Essentially, it is concessional borrowing, around 4.2% per annum by Abia State through the federal government. So the funds are to be on lent to Abia State, and then for waste management and rehabilitation of roads in Umahia and Aba in particular. That was approved. Secondly, there was financing of $1 billion, concessional financing, 25 years, 8 years moratorium at about the same 4.2% per annum, which was approved by the African Development Bank for this administration. And really, it was a recognition of the macroeconomic measures that have been taken, the swift movement towards macro stability, restoring revenue, improving the foreign exchange situation and so forth, that have been taken by this government. The reward, as far as the African Development Bank, a concessional financing organization, was to provide $1 billion in general budget support. And finally, in order to keep working hard and maximizing the ability of the government to use the markets and to take advantage of different situations and improve situations, the Federal Executive Council approved a total limit of 2 trillion naira to be available for use by the by Ministry of Finance in order to go in and out the market, and essentially to, where possible, bring down the rate of interest on the current outstanding. So essentially, it will be refinancing, and the view is that there will be an opportunity to save about 50 billion naira or more in debt servicing over time by giving back expensive debt and refinancing it with cheaper funding. Is the 1 billion for budget support the same as the 1 billion for aggregate? The answer is no. As I said earlier, this is a concessional financing. It is difficult to get, and the budget support one in particular was really a reward and support for the ongoing macroeconomic reforms, which of course improve the viability and financial standing and capacity of the country. So the two are different. And then on the purpose of the $1 billion budget support, It is to support the government's program overall, but particularly in its regulatory framework for the power sector, strengthening social inclusion, all important domestic resource mobilization. You talked earlier about the tax committee and the fiscal policy reform efforts that are going on. So it's to support that and generally to strengthen accountability, transparency in government operations. So there's a whole set of specific programs and initiatives which the $1 billion is to support, but it's not a project-based funding.
You see various agencies lined up, NDLSA, open your bag, Immigration, open your bag, Customs, open your bag, AFCC, open your bag, and they will dipping their hands in your bag. And, so we thought we should do something like you have the TSA in America, where you have detection machines. So when they pass through your machine, your bags through the machines, it detects explosives or any other thing, and that's the end of the search. And so it's for the approval of the award of contract for the supply and installation of customized explosive and narcotics detection screening systems with remote and dual view for the international airports of Abuja, Lagos, Kano, Port Harcourt, and Enugu. Thank you. I have a number of questions here. The cost of the machines for the international airports have been given at 3 billion, 233 million, and 600,000, inclusive of 7% VAT. Naira. 3 billion naira, 233 billion, 233 million, 600,000. That's 3.2 approximately. With a completion period of 12 months, we can get the money from the moment we give them the money. It's customized, so they're going to build it for us from the companies abroad. And they have a completion period of 12 months to do that. Then somebody asked about the advantage of the agreement with Guyana. Guyana, any country where you open a route, to go and come, it's always an advantage of citizen in terms of trade and in terms of movement, in terms of holidays and all of that. But most importantly, Guyana is a South American country. And you should know that our routes from Nigeria to South America, they are not many or even non-existent. If you want to go to Brazil now, you have to go first to London to catch. And then Brazil is just 4 hours or 5 hours across the Atlantic on our left-hand side. So if you have a direct flight to Brazil, you spend 4.5 hours. But right now, you may spend up to 18 hours. You first go and transit somewhere, maybe in Europe first, to get to a South American country. So anything that opens up that route for us, the South American route, where you can go there and then transit to maybe Colombia or Brazil and all that, it can be a transit point too for Nigerians who are visiting the South American countries. This agreement has been signed long before we even came into power. So 2014, it was signed, but not ratified. And they have been pushing for the ratification because they also want to come to Nigeria to do their businesses and other things. As to the plane that landed in Asaba, immediately yesterday I called for a report on it, and immediately also I summoned the heads of all my agencies. I'm sure you've seen it, and I speak with you as I'm here. They've been waiting for me since 2 o'clock. So I'm leaving here straight to that meeting now with the heads of the agencies. And I'm sure because of my concern, I'm sure you have seen the press release by the NCA suspending the wet leases of United. If you have not seen it, that release has since come out. That is a precautionary step that the NCA took until they find out the real cause of that. But then, because some caution needs to be applied, and we have to take precaution, the NCA decided to suspend wet leases, the wet leases by United. Not so, just answers the other question too. It's not wet leases generally, but the United wet lease. What's a wet lease? A wet lease is when you go and hire a plane outside the country and they bring their crew, their pilot, the crew, and everybody. So they may not be familiar with your terrain. If it's a Nigerian pilot, once it's descending to another place, this will not look like Abuja for me, you know. But a wet lease, a white man or somebody, a foreigner flying the plane, if a foreigner is flying the plane, he just follows the coordinate given to him. And if it's a wrong coordinate, you know, well, if it's a Nigerian pilot, will say, this is not the coordinate that takes me to Abuja. So I think that's the precautionary measure that the agency took. Let me be clear that a minister does not get involved in regulation. I'm sure you all know that. So when anything happens, say Minister of Aviation, is a regulator. But my duty as minister, which I have sought, you know, to enforce and implement to the end, is to ensure that they do their work. And that's why I've summoned them, to ensure that they enforce their regulations to the letter. And I told all of them, the way I will not give excuses to my president, who has appointed me here, I don't want excuses from them. Anytime there is an incident, I told them, anytime there's an incident at the airport, either an aircraft, the tire gets burst, or some fuel issue and all that, there's a failure of regulation somewhere. Because somebody ought to have inspected that tire before the plane took off, to know that the tire is not fit for landing. Somebody should have inspected the runway to say that it's not fit for landing. And you land and you skid off the runway. So anytime there's an incident, the first assumption is that there's a failure of regulation somewhere. And that, of course, is what I intend to impress upon them. And like I said, I will not give my president excuses. This involves the lives of Nigerians. It's a very delicate, you know, ministry I find myself. The lives of Nigerians. And so I will not take excuses too, the way my president will not take excuses from me. And that's, you know, I intend to do today. But of course, we'll look at the technical issues and we'll brief the press too in my office after we've finished it. But I've reacted to these developments, and the NCA have also reacted. The last question, time frame, cancellation, is about the Air Nigeria project. I have deliberately not granted the full press interview. I've heard all kinds of things going on, all kinds of brickbats in the social media. But I cannot preempt my president. I cannot. All the documents, all the reports, everything we have forwarded to Mr. President. The issues we met on the ground. But just to say that it would have been irresponsible of me as minister to take over office, and I feel the pulse of Nigerians. I feel even the National Assembly raised concerns over that. And so many stakeholders. It would have been irresponsible to close my eyes totally to those concerns. So because of that, we suspended it to say, let's just look at all the issues and recommend. Now we have looked at all the issues, and it's before Mr. President. But let me just give one or two snippets because of Nigerians who are, you know, who are quick to judge. In the agreement, you are giving tax waivers to Ethiopian airline coming into Nigeria. They asked for tax waivers for 5 years, and you granted them to come and compete with your local airlines who are paying those heavy taxes. How? You want to create a monopoly. That's why when they tell you that, oh, we want to crash price by 70%, it's a lie. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Because they have removed all taxes from you, and you granted them to the tax waivers. And initially, they will crash prices. Once you drive every other person out of the market, you now have a monopoly that you can hike it 500%. Nobody there to challenge you. The only thing that brings down prices in the commercial world is competition. It's fair competition. In the agreement, they also made, you know, a proposal that they will appoint everybody, top management, everybody Ethiopian in Nigeria. And we agreed.